Good morning. This is Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, get more information about past shows and the future shows at our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and organizations about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce one of my friends, and he is Brent Russell, and a new friend, Jane Brody. And you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this, guys. So that's Brent and Jane. And I should mention that Jane Brody works as a property manager and a commercial real estate broker in Asheville, North Carolina, and New York City, focusing on commercial leasing for the public and private sectors. With over a decade of experience in the commercial real estate industry, Ms. Brody brings senior experience specializing in arts, not-for-profit, healthcare, and educational sectors. Her leasing transactions total over $50 million. She received the 2021 CoStar Power Broker Award for both sales and leasing. Prior to her real estate career, she worked with the American Red Cross, Ben & Jerry's, Coca-Cola, the International Special Olympics, and the U.S. Fund for UNICEF. She's done a whole bunch of other things, but we'll get into that in just a second. Jane, let me start off by this question. You grew up as a child where?
In New York City.
Okay, New York, joined the crowd, right? Born in New York City, grew up, if you can't tell, on Long Island. Okay, if you can't tell. Where'd you grow up? You grew up in New York?
I grew up in Eastchester, a little north of New York City, but I was born on 61st Street and I had an apartment on 63rd Street. So for 40 years, I lived 2 blocks from where I was actually born.
Very cool. When you were growing up then in New York City or outside of New York City, did you always know you wanted to be in real estate? Was that your goal as a child?
No, of course not. It's something you fall into. And I fell into it kind of late in life. I was about 50, and I was on a board of a not-for-profit called Leave Out the Violence. We work with teenagers that were victims, witnesses, and perpetrators of violence, and we train them through media arts, spoken word, photography, and art, and we help them live nonviolent lives. And we were looking for space, and I was the chair of the real estate committee, and we had all these yo-yo brokers that were taking us next to accounting firms and law firms, thinking that the landlord would approve our use. Very quickly, I realized that this was never going to happen, and someone recommended a broker to me. We hired him, and he took us to a very small building in the Garment area by Macy's, where we had 1 floor. We could go in with a key. Kids could come in and out. It was our own space, no security systems or anything to worry about, and it was a great experience. And I realized after the broker offered me an opportunity to join his firm that I really wanted to do something where I helped nonprofits. I'd been an executive director a bunch of times, worked in city and state government. So I fell into real estate by being a board member. So kind of a strange thing. And in New York City, there are 10,000 not-for-profit organizations. So it's quite a nice pool to swim in.
Well, it's almost like Asheville. Asheville is considered in Western North Carolina, right? The nonprofit capital of the area. So you still kept in now. That's very interesting. So you still kept in nonprofit, and then
Yes.
what got you to Asheville?
Well, COVID. So I was in New York City and commercial real estate kind of crashed and burned. Vacancy went up to 90%.
Right.
And I'd been here about 12 times and always had it in the back of my mind that this would be a great place to live. Sort of the multicultural, the arts, the theater, the music, the nature, and of course, a great group of people with the same kind of shared values. So I thought this would be a great place to be. So I did what everybody did at the time. I spent all my time looking at houses online. And I had a friend that lived here. He found my house. We bought it without seeing it. And then I booked the Grove Park Inn for a week for my husband to come down. And if you don't like Asheville after staying at the Grove Park Inn for a week, you're never going to like Asheville.
Well, it's funny. Your experience is not dissimilar to mine. That we checked a whole bunch of different areas. Florida, South Carolina, you name it. And then we came to Asheville for a weekend. And we came back the second weekend, and we bought a house without even selling our other house. Just within within a day, you said your husband, but within a day we knew that
Uh-huh.
Asheville was for us. But I guess the other thing you left out is that also Asheville was the home of Brent Russell, and that
That was my first
Keep
best
note
friend,
of the
Brent. I was able to meet Brent very quickly, and we've been friends ever since.
okay, well that's great. So I'm glad you're in Asheville. And Brent, I've known now for a bunch of years, and Brent has been my realtor. And the compliment to Brent Russell, of course, is that realtor twice. So he helped us buy a house and then sell a house, or vice versa. And that does that happen often, Brent? That if you buy a house from somebody and the person turns around and sells through you, or vice versa?
Blaine, I'm happy to say that the last couple of years, 80% of my business has been from referrals. So it's been from people that I've helped buy and sell. I have one couple that I've helped them buy 3 homes, and I'm working on another couple that just called me last week, and this will be the second home for them.
And have
So
you also helped them sell it or sell the other
help
house?
them sell it and help them find a new home, and that's for me super rewarding.
Well, I have to tell you, Brent, as much as we love our home, I hope we're not going to buy and sell this one so quickly. But Jane, just a compliment to Brent is he was the best. And I worked with several other
Thank you.
realtors, but what a pleasure, and made a difficult process actually almost enjoyable. And I guess does that happen, guys, that people like after you work with them, that must be very exciting when they say they're happy with it or they had a good time with the process.
It is, Blaine. I tell you, buying and selling real estate can be so stressful. And I just recently did a little intro video for myself. And one of the things I say in that video is that, one of my goals is to be, over communicate, try to be proactive. I like to answer a question before somebody asked it. And then, of course, I think in the long run, you should have a little fun and you should try to make it enjoyable. And if you can get in front of any issues that may come up, it does become an enjoyable process. And I'm happy to say that most of the time, when I finish with a project, whether it's selling or helping someone buy, it has been enjoyable for myself and for those people.
And not to make this the Brent Russell fan club, but I'll just add one other thing, Jane. And it was just incredible that when we were doing one of the transactions with Brent, and he had the audacity to go away. I couldn't believe, I think it was Hawaii, Alaska, where was it?
Good bid. I think it was
Anyway,
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
It
And
was.
Brent was very good. He said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I'll have somebody in the office, any questions, whatever. But it was Brent all the time, he's calling from Hawaii. And it's just incredible. It's like
He
24,
calculated the 5-hour time difference.
Yeah.
right? He did too. But anyway, just always appreciated that. And I should mention
Well,
that
I
Brent,
think what's
yeah,
interesting about that, Blaine, is I kind of think of taking the mission on your back and walking in that person's shoes and kind of really thinking about what they need and kind of visualizing how you can help them find the right place for them. I do that with commercial real estate also. So I've had medical clients where, have sold a building and then we have to downsize and find them something else. And I know their anxiety is really high because it's their business, their livelihood. And if I kind of visualize what I think they need and want and just work till I try to find as close as I can, it really helps me do my job. And sometimes it takes a long time in commercial real estate. One thing that's a little different between residential and commercial are the transactions can be much, much longer. I spent probably a year and a half with 2 doctors before we were able to sell their building till it was the right time, comfort level, the connections, and then we were able to do the transaction at the particular time because we were asked by another client if this particular building would be available. So we
also
did
the
it
other
kind of
difference.
quietly. And then I did a transaction here in Asheville for Evelyn Charities. They were over at
I
Westgate
know, sure.
for a long time, for years and years, and they had all different kinds of funky space. They were in one retail
I remember.
location. They had a long, dark hallway, and the staff was, never saw the light of day, and the people that needed the services had to queue up inside corridors and stuff. And it was very personally upsetting to me that these people who need services and the staff who are trying to provide them had such a poor environment to be in. So I was able to finally locate them as standalone building, which was great because there was a lot of, disgruntled other renters around them that didn't appreciate the charities because they had their own businesses to operate. Here they had a standalone building, 3/4 of it for warehouse, and the other quarter for their offices. So now they can set up the prom selling, the Christmas store, all on the same site. So that really was something that was very enjoyable for me because until we found the right scenario and the right owner who loves them, it didn't really make the charity function at the best that they can.
By the way, I should know too. So I knew where Evelyn was. I know it well. And then
Mhm.
they also had a recycle. They could drop off stuff recycling. It wasn't
Right.
a great environment. Where are they now?
23 Hamilton Street, right behind Mission Hospital. So
Okay.
they have separate parking. They were able to do their coat drive very successfully there. And they're about to launch their back to school drive, which is terrific. So I think that, there's a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of nonprofits here in Asheville, but sometimes they're functioning in spaces that aren't as good for them as they can be. So helping them find the right place, because the mission of the organization, a lot of it has to do with the environment that they're in.
By the way, you're raising an interesting point in terms of if a nonprofit is listening, how does an organization, they've been in a facility for a while, Evelyn being an example, how do they know when it's time to look for a different location or be in a different area?
Well, a lot of things are driven by what we call lease expiration date, LED. And so they were about to renegotiate their lease. So either they were going to stay in their particular space or we were going to continue to find something else. So you should always have two conversations. What will your scenario look like to stay in your existing space, or what could the opportunity of looking around in the marketplace? What is the budget difference? The cost of moving is a consideration. Is the landlord where you are comfortable in reaching for you, or raising the rent at a very high level that makes it difficult for the organization to survive? So there are a lot of factors into that. I think that it's always important to assess what you have, if it's the right size, if it's really working for the clients that you're serving. And that's one reason why nonprofits need space, because a lot of times people are coming to them.
Much like I mentioned with Brent before, do you ever have, I'd be curious, a situation where you get one firm out of a location, Evelyn, and then do you ever wind up turning around and then getting another client in the location? Does that ever happen?
Sometimes you get repeat, or I was explaining to you that doctor scenario where we were selling that particular building. One doctor was retiring and the other one wanted to lease space. So sometimes you are moving the shells around, as you would say. Definitely. Yes.
Okay,
And
interesting.
if you're doing your job well, then you're helping them in whatever they need.
And I guess that's the whole goal, just help them out. And back to Brent. Brent Russell has certainly an interesting background because I know Brent, I guess, from the time I've been in Nashville, when you're in residential real estate. So the same question I asked Jane, when you were a kid, remind me where you grew up?
Grew up in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay. Same thing too, growing up in Richmond, Virginia, was that your goal in life to become a realtor?
Not at all. Not at all, Blaine. I had a wonderful career, and I was in the hospitality industry, and I had a wonderful career there. I retired as a CEO out of Melbourne, Australia, and then I went into a mirror industry, believe it or not, the senior living industry, and I had a wonderful 12-year run in senior living and really enjoyed that. Retired full time to Asheville, and I like to tell people that after 2 months, the views were great, and the refrigerator was my best friend. So I thought I've got to do something. So I always, even twice, for a corporate move, I said no. I'll sell my own home. I kept in touch with the real estate in each city where we live, and I did sell my own home, even when the company said we'll sell it for you. I did it. So I was interested in real estate, took the class here in Asheville. Never forget the day I came down to meet Neil Hanks here at the bottom of Town Mountain Road where I live. And for 8 years now, I've been very happy selling residential real estate.
And when you got into residential real estate, I'll ask the question sort of similar to Jane. What made you decide to want to specialize in, I guess, residential, or I guess you have a choice, you could have done commercial, or do some people, I guess, do both?
They do both, and I was asked to do both. But I'll tell you, Blaine, I was kind of ready for residential. I'd always been interested in residential. We had moved a lot during my corporate career, so felt like I knew a lot about residential real estate. I never liked the commercial real estate part of it when I was in the corporate world, and I let someone else handle it because I didn't like it. But I always thought residential real estate. I like helping people. That comes from my hospitality background and my senior living background. I like to help people, and this residential helps me do that quite a bit.
Again, what you do, and Jane apparently does as well, you also make it easy, which again, as I'm saying, I just find it incredible to believe that I'm talking to realtors and saying, you guys make it easy for me, but you do.
Well, a good realtor should do that. We should have the knowledge of the market, Blaine, and we should have I can't tell you the people that call me every week and say, do you know a painter? Hey, Brent, I have this problem. Do you know this? We should be a resource for people. And if I could say one thing about Jane, Blaine, as you can probably tell, Jane takes the mission to her heart of whoever she works for. And I think that's something that's really made her very successful.
If I
Wait,
can,
I
let
should
me,
also
I'm
say
sorry.
something about our firm, which is, obviously we've been around for 46 years, stellar reputation. We really pride ourselves on the quality of the brokers that we have, but the residential piece of the pie is much, much larger than the commercial transactions. So for instance, we have 450 residential brokers. There's 12 commercial brokers. So it's a very small slice of all of the things that are happening. Because as you know, our town is a lot of mountain tourism, very small companies. We don't have a lot of business, and we have a very small amount of industrial manufacturing. So hospitality is important, retail is important, but it's a very kind of tight market. So that's one thing that I think is important for people to understand. And also, it's a very different avenue. A person who does residential, as you said, talking about Brent, you have to be involved with a person's life. When you're doing commercial, you're dealing with that person's business or organization. So it's a little bit of a separation, and it's a more personal relationship. It's important to keep in mind what the person needs for their business or their organization, but it's a budget issue. It's much more cut and dry.
Jane, let me ask you this question, and I know it's more so in Brent's end, but I'm curious from the commercial standpoint. There have been changes, I don't follow it that closely, but there have been changes in the real estate industry. I know much so in the residential end, but commercial end, have been changes with respect to the way people enter into contracts and the negotiating of contracts. Has that changed also?
I would say clarity is always helpful for anyone. And it's been much more of an emphasis on the residential side, but we want to make sure that our clients understand that the compensation that a commercial agent is given has to be either paid for by the landlord or by the person securing the property. So we make it clear that that's the expectation and that those documents are drawn up with the understanding that this is what's on the table. And that's figured into the conversation as you choose which property you're going to go forward with. So I would say it's not as large a part of the commercial business, but it's still, North Carolina is a state that has had a lot of disclosures and forms for a very long time. So it's not quite a big deal for us. So it is business as usual, but probably one or two more papers that our clients have to sign to understand the transaction, which is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with clarity and making sure everyone understands what's happening in a transaction.
Well, let me turn then to Brent on that, because that's what I've been reading about. There are changes, more so residential and I guess in two areas. You mentioned the clarity and the paperwork, but also even in terms of fee structure, has that changed or is that
Yes,
different?
Blaine. I'm glad you asked that. Yes, so it's just recently changed. The new national guidelines came into effect on August 17th, and we're fortunate in North Carolina. We've always had a negotiated commission fee. We've always had a document to sign so that sellers and buyers knew exactly what the commission would be, especially sellers. What has changed in across the country is no longer is a buyer's agent. So, if I list a home, I'm the listing agent. I'm looking for a buyer's agent to bring a buyer to buy that home. So, what has changed is now there's a listing agent commission and there's a buyer's agent commission. The seller can decide, okay, Brent, you're my listing agent. I'd like to work with you. What is your fee? And then we look and say, okay, what would we like to offer a buyer's agent to hopefully attract a buyer's agent to bring a buyer to this home? So it has given the seller a little more power as to decide what they want to offer the buyer's agent. I tell people what my fee is, and then we say, okay, what will we offer a buyer's agent? It's changing. It's just coming into the market. We just made this change on August 17th. One of the biggest changes, Blaine, is that no longer on MLS, on the listing of a home, can a buyer's agent see what their commission will be, what the seller is offering. So it is going to help because it now increased communication from a buyer's agent to give me a call, or I proactively call them and say, what is the commission for this home? My people are interested. If, say, for example, the buyer's agent says, look, for all the work I'm going to do for you, Mr. Buyer, I'd like a 3% commission. If they find a home that's offering 2 or 2.5%, now the difference is that buyer's agent will say to the buyer, hey, we'd like for you to pay the other 0.5% or 1%. So that's a good conversation for buyer's agents and buyers to have in advance.
Let me ask you both in terms of that conversation and tying in, and I'll ask Jane this first, that there's a lot there, as you said, even in your firm, 12 people who do what you do, but there are other people, I assume, in Asheville who do the same kind of thing. There are other, I dare not mention, there are other agencies. And so the question I have, and then I'm trying to think back how we wound up with Brent, but how does, what do you recommend if somebody's looking for a realtor? Aside from, they'll hear you today and might be interested. What are some of the things people should look for when they choose a realtor? Commercial, yeah.
I would say like-minded caseload. So for instance, we have some people that are really good at understanding multifamily. We have some people that are really good at understanding land. There's a gentleman in my office, Mark Morris, who has 30 years of an appraisal business. And he's very smart on understanding assembles of land. So if you're interested in a certain size or you have a certain expectation of what you want to do with the land, we have other people that are leasing experts. But one thing that's different about Asheville than in New York City, when we talked about my background being in nonprofit and education and medical, here in Asheville, you have to be a generalist. You have to be able to do retail, restaurant, multifamily, industrial, office. So there's really experience across the board, and it's chemistry. I mean, you have great chemistry with Brent. You have to like that person, feel like that person is on your side. And also, I've been in Asheville for 4 years. I don't know Asheville as well as some of my other colleagues. So if you're interested in outer areas, some of other parts of the county or other counties, there are other people in my team that really know those areas. So I think it's a mix. And just like we have all our brokers on our website, which we ask people to check out, you can find that kind of match. And we also have, sometimes people call specifically about a listing that someone has. They fall into a conversation, they develop a little bit of a rapport, and maybe that listing isn't right, but you like that person. You can work with that person on something else. So it's just a question of, a little bit of blind dating, I guess is a nice way of saying it.
Jane, I don't know if you know this about Brent, but one of the things that drew us to him, even though he never did for us, but he also is this phenomenal piano player. And he to sell a house, Brent actually gave a concert. Did you ever see that video?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
It's great.
But Brent, that convinced us. But then I was crushed,
Sense of
Brent. I guess,
humor.
well, I guess our house had already been sold by that time, but I was always wanting you to do that for our house as well. And explain to folks who have no idea what we're talking about. It was just one of the great videos I've ever seen.
Well, thank you, Blaine. It was early in my real estate career, and I had I had my first luxury home that was $1 million plus for sale, and they had a player piano, and I just couldn't keep my hands off of it. So I did do a video where I was playing the piano, and then halfway through, I got up to look at the view, and there's a voiceover of me saying, "Look at this view," but the whole time the piano's playing, and then I go back and finish the song, and people realize, oh my gosh, he really wasn't playing the piano.
Do you
But
think did it help sell that house, you think?
it did help sell the house, and I got a great feedback from that. And I can't tell you, people, that I'll meet someone, and the next time I meet them, they'll say, "Well, we know you're a piano player," and I'm like, "You didn't watch the whole video."
By the way, I think I wanted to ask you for it. I'm asking for a reason. Do you by chance have that clip anywhere?
I do. I have it. I'll send it to you.
Because I'd like to share it in my blog. But just Jane,
Okay.
it's one of the great videos of all
I love
time.
it.
That it was really funny. But I don't know, it just blew me away. So send it to me. I appreciate it.
Blaine also, he did that other thing that was amazing. He did that HGTV contest where for the luxury condominium downtown. You should talk about that. Very innovative.
Yeah, that was I did have, and I sold it still holds the record, the highest priced condominium in downtown Asheville or Buncombe County about 3 years ago. And we entered an HGTV downtown historic contest. And there were 6 other cities and 6 other homes across the country. And people would go into HGTV and view these homes. And the downtown condo at 75 Broadway won the contest.
Were you on the TV on that too?
Well, they didn't come and do me on TV. My video was on the TV. That was a great thing. You asked, Blaine, I think that's a really good question. Why do people? The age-old thing is that everybody knows 7 real estate agents.
Right.
And the key is you're going to think about the agent who was most recently in touch with you. So it is about communication. It is about proactive communication. I think Jane is right. Beverly-Hanks, I was fortunate. I had a large number of real estate agencies that I looked at before I joined Beverly-Hanks. And it was their history. It was the integrity in the market. And certainly as a part of the leading real estate companies of the world, they have a worldwide reach. We were the largest in Western North Carolina. You may have seen where 3 years ago we partnered up with Allen Tate. So Allen Tate Realty was the largest real estate company in North and South Carolina, and Beverly-Hanks had the Western North Carolina market. We now have 18 offices in Western North Carolina, and Allen Tate and Beverly-Hanks make a great partnership. We've taken the best of what Beverly-Hanks has and married it to the best of what Allen Tate has. So I'll give you an example. Our Beverly-Hanks website, instead of getting 10,000 hits a month, we now get 100,000 hits. When someone says to me, "Gee, how can you market my home?" I can say, "I'm going to market your home, not only throughout the United States, but certainly through the Allen Tate network in North and South Carolina." And that's really, really important. But it is integrity. It is knowing the market. It's a proven track record. I'm all the time telling people, "Let me introduce you to so and so whose home I sold," and see what they thought. And that has really helped me a great deal.
And something, Jane, I'll share with you that Brent does. I'm sure you do as well. But again, another compliment. But it's the fact that you still keep in touch. And where I find, Jane, what happens, especially in the arts area, you mentioned, your arts background, and it really galls me with a lot of people in theater that they don't publicize their own stuff. They don't keep in touch with their clients, and they just expect it to happen. And so, in terms of a very proactive standpoint, that you folks, once you're a customer, you're kind of a customer for life, as opposed to just a one-time occurrence. And I just find it hard to believe that so many realtors don't keep in touch with their clients after the fact, or, it's just, to me, it's a mistake. But I guess that's important to you guys to keep in touch with your customers after the
Definitely. And
fact.
I was just going to piggyback on two things that Brent said, if I could, Blaine, for a second.
Yeah.
So our firm is NAI, Beverly-Hanks, the commercial division, and we're part of a network of 6,000 offices globally. So that was one of the things that's a little different about us versus the other local commercial agents. And another aspect what attracted me to the firm was the commitment to community. Tremendous amount of values, giving back. If it's not United Way, and Brent does a lot of work with United Way also, we're also involved with all kinds of programs to help locally. Transformation Village, and all of our brokers are involved in some aspect of social responsibility and giving back. And that comes from the top.
Yeah. And that's how I think I first met Brent, and your point's well taken, Jane, that I knew a lot of realtors, and you feel bad because everybody wants your business. But Brent I didn't have a particularly close relationship with, but I knew through SCORE, Asheville SCORE. It just always impressed me. And, just somehow I just knew I wanted to use him. But your point, well taken, had I meet him through SCORE, through another organization, had he not been involved in that, I probably would have never met him, so that's just a point that you make. Let me ask you just a couple other questions, folks. In terms of today, we're looking at August, shall be aired on August 27th, 2024. Describe, if you would.
My birthday.
What?
Tomorrow's my birthday, the 27th. Today's my birthday.
Tomorrow.
Today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can wish you a happy birthday in
Thank
advance,
you very
Brent.
much.
But anyway,
Brent.
let me ask you this, guys. In terms of being in August now, good or bad time for real estate? Let's talk specifically about Asheville. What would you say, Jane?
In terms of commercial real estate?
Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting is that because the interest rates are high, that is challenging for people to borrow money and to sell property. So some of the areas have very flat growth in terms of the office market. One of the strongest components is the medical area in Asheville because we don't have a lot of big business.
Right.
Small industrial is another area, not a lot of tremendous growth. We are seeing hospitality continue to expand because that is leisure travel is an area, and we are able to still capture some good rents, good hotel rates, I should say. So I think that it's a varied market. We're a very protected community in terms of we're still extremely desirable. People don't want to live here and visit here. So I think that in terms of us versus some other areas, we are faring well. But in terms of growth as new business, with the interest rates coming down, that's going to be helpful.
And I guess it makes it tough on Brent's standpoint that people want to, live here, but it's very hard if you have to work here and live here at the same time too, because that's, I guess, a real problem that people come to you, they love Asheville, they want to live here, but sometimes I guess the point is, and I think even to this with us way back when, you encouraged us to look at other areas as well, right? Because if you can't live downtown Asheville or Asheville itself, there are many surrounding areas that are worth considering that'll be more reasonably price-wise than Asheville.
Yeah, I think so, Blaine. I mean, one of the things I do is I always try to sit down and have a conversation with people and just try to figure out their lifestyle. Guess what? If you want to come downtown and eat dinner 7 nights a week, you want to hear the music, you want to be a part of the art scene, you probably don't want to live a 25-minute drive from downtown. I've actually had people who've bought homes further out and called 2 years later and said, "Oh my gosh, Brent, we're downtown so often, we need to be in closer." So I think it's all about just making sure the person's lifestyle and where they want to go. Some people are homebodies. I just had a couple last week say to me, they're coming here from Florida. We're homebodies. We're okay to be a little further out in the county. That's okay. And for them, it'll be a little more affordable out that way. No
And
question.
sometimes it's just the opposite. I'm seeing that people living downtown, and they decide they don't want to be downtown and they move out. and the worst story, I won't mention the restaurant or the building. Feel so sorry, Jane. You may know where I'm talking about, is that people lived in a beautiful apartment, and all of a sudden, a restaurant across the way built on top floor and ruined all the values of the people lived across the way. And what a shame, but I guess there's nothing you can do about that.
Well, I think that's growth. And that happens
Yeah, I mean,
quite often.
I have to say that there are some strategies. Also, I know a story of a person that lives near the guy that drums on the street.
Right.
So that can be something that can be, discouraging or upsetting when you've spent a lot of money on an apartment and then suddenly it's, you're living with some people that are making a lot of noise. So I think the best thing you can do is make sure that you're as protected as you can. And growth is definitely something that's possible, but it is very challenging to get new construction in downtown Asheville. So there is some hotel growth. We have the CBD, the community districts for overlays to build hotels, but we're also doing more things to make it safer downtown. There's a new business improvement district tax.
Right.
So there'll be new security, new cleaning up. So I think people are making sure that the experience is better all the time. So I think that's a good thing for Asheville. As far as, it's always a dance is, people want affordable housing, which we all know is important. And we want to make sure everyone has access to affordable housing. We have very large percentages that people are requesting through city council, but there's also the cost of construction, borrowing money, cost of land. Sometimes it ties your hands from being able to move forward. So it's a dance of how our values are kept whole, and also a developer could come in and actually give some opportunities for all kinds of people to live here. So I think it's a story and an economic challenge that a lot of cities are facing.
And two final questions, if I can. Brent pointed out beforehand, behind you, what are we seeing? This is the we intentionally kind of blocked it off. What's that? What's that board?
We have these monitors in our office, Blaine, that just talk about all the different things, whether it's mortgage. By the way, mortgage rates are dropped. They're down to 6.44%. And also, you asked a little bit, Blaine, second quarter 2024 was ahead of second quarter 2023. So we had more single family residents sold. We had more lots sold. As for August, last week across the country is back to school week. So it's a little slow these couple of weeks, but this weekend holiday will pick up. And for the last 3 years, my busiest time of the year has been now through the end of the year.
Right, you've told me that. But wait, not to get into the politics of it, but will the election affect people?
We typically find that in an election year, people will tend to delay or slow down their decision until after the election. And we feel like in the luxury market this year, we've seen that. We do have more luxury homes on the market this year, but luxury has done very well so far in 2024, and I see that continuing through the fall.
Brent, if folks want to get in touch with you specifically, then I'll ask Jane the same question. What's the best bet?
The best for me is two ways. My phone number is 828-528-1829, or it's brent.russell@allentate.com.
Okay, naturally, because people didn't pick up the first time, I'll ask you to repeat that. So
okay, sure. Phone number is 828-528-1829, and my email address is brent.russell@allentate.com.
And I can only say about Brent, I can't talk about Jane in this regard, but if you get in touch with Brent, he will get back to you. So thank you, my friend.
Very important.
And Jane, the same question. If folks want to get in touch with you,
I would say the same thing. My cell phone number is 646-456-8376. And my email is just the letter J, BRODY @NAI Beverly-Hanks.com.
By the way, I want to thank you for that too, and I'll ask you to repeat that. No, thank you. So repeat that once again. You want to get in touch with Jane
Sure.
Brody?
646-456-8376. And it's
An email?
jbrody@NAI Beverly-Hanks.com.
Again, the compliment is the way you did that, because I don't know about you guys, but don't you love it when you listen to somebody's machine, call back, 423, and so thank you very much.
So I'm always calling brokers
Yeah.
to negotiate, and so I've learned to speak very slowly because you don't want to keep calling back your message all the time.
Anyway,
So I
you
always
did
do
that.
my message very slowly.
You did that great. Anyway, I want to thank Brent Russell and Jane Brody for being my guests on this edition of the Blaines World webcast. Also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And I'll say that hopefully I'll bump into you guys certainly in the near future, if not sooner, but definitely Brent. We're in touch every so often. So thanks a lot, guys. That was great.
Thank you so much. It's been
Thank
our
you.
pleasure. Thank
Thanks
you,
so
Blaine.
much, Blaine.